There is a plant sitting in a pot somewhere in your house right now that you have already half decided to throw away. Maybe it is an anthurium with leaves gone yellow and brown at the edges. Maybe it is a pothos, a peace lily, a philodendron, something you bought 2 years ago full of hope and have been quietly avoiding eye contact with ever since. You water it out of guilt more than expectation. You have already started thinking about where you might put a replacement plant once this one finally gives up. I am here to tell you something the garden centers will never tell you, because there is no profit in it for them. That plant is very likely not dead. It is very likely not even close to dead, and the method I am about to walk you through, step by step, has brought back plants that looked far worse than whatever is sitting in your living room right now. The reason most people lose a struggling houseplant is not that the plant was unsalvageable. It is that people respond to a dying plant in one of two ways, and both make things worse. Some panic and throw the plant out the moment leaves turn yellow, assuming the situation is hopeless, when the root system below the soil is very often still alive and simply waiting for someone to clean it up. Others do the opposite and water it more, assuming the plant is thirsty, when in 9 cases out of 10, the real problem is rot. And more water on top of rot is the fastest way to finish a plant off completely. What the plant actually needs is something closer to a small surgical intervention, and that is exactly what I am going to show you today. This technique works on the vast majority of common indoor ornamentals, anthuriums, pothos, philodendrons, peace lilies, Disinfect, and most other tropical houseplants with a similar root structure. I am going to demonstrate it today using an anthurium that arrived at this stage looking about as far gone as a houseplant can look and still have a pulse. Every leaf damaged. No healthy green tissue left anywhere above the soil line. The kind of plant that, if you set it on the curb next to your trash cans, none of your neighbors would blink. And by the end of 6 weeks, using nothing but a few things you almost certainly already have in your kitchen right now, this same plant will be producing fresh green shoots and growing like nothing ever happened to it. Before we dive in, I have a major announcement. The gardening guide you have been writing to me about for months is finally here. The Plant Once Garden is officially out. It is roughly 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, with a hand-drawn heritage cover and warm cream pages that feel like your grandmother's own gardening guide. Inside, 90 perennials that come back every year with almost no labor, 6 garden plans, the planting calendar, and the hydrogen peroxide method explained completely. Scan the QR code on your screen now, or click the link in the pinned comment or description below to get your copy. Thank you for your patience. Now, back to the garden. I am going to walk you through this in 5 stages, in the exact order they need to happen, because the order genuinely matters here. Skip a stage, or do them out of sequence, and you will either fail to stop the rot, or you will shock a plant that is too weak to handle being shocked. Follow the order exactly as I lay it out, and you will see results that genuinely surprised me the first time I tried this method myself. Stay with me through the whole process, because stage 4 and stage 5 are where the real transformation happens, and I do not want you to miss the small details that make the difference between a plant that limps along and a plant that comes back stronger than it was before any of this trouble started. Before we get into the steps, let's talk about what you will need, because all of it is either already in your home or costs almost nothing to acquire. Pruning shears or clean scissors, 1 fresh lemon, a small amount of plain coconut water, the kind sold in cartons, not the sweetened versions with added flavoring, a couple of teaspoons of raw white rice from your pantry, coconut husk chips, sometimes labeled cocoa coir chips, inexpensive at almost any garden center, sand or a basic well-draining organic potting soil, and a few containers, a measuring cup, something to mix in, a clean pot, and a spray bottle for later. That is the entire list. Nothing exotic, nothing that requires a special trip beyond errands you would normally run this week. Stage 1. The first instinct most people resist is the reluctance to cut. When a plant is already struggling, cutting away parts of it can feel like making things worse, like taking something from a patient with little left to give. But here is the honest truth about plant physiology that most casual plant owners have never been told. A damaged leaf is not neutral. It actively costs the plant energy. The plant keeps sending water and nutrients to tissue that can no longer photosynthesize efficiently and will never recover, and that is energy desperately needed elsewhere. Every yellowed, browned, or rotting leaf you leave attached is an ongoing drain on a patient that needs every bit of strength for the recovery ahead. So take your pruning shears or scissors and remove every leaf showing significant damage, yellowing, browning, soft spots, or visible rot. Do not be sentimental about this. If the plant in front of you has no green leaves left at all, as was the case with the anthurium I am demonstrating this on, that is all right. It looks alarming, I know, like you are looking at a stick in a pot rather than a plant. But the leaves were never going to be the part of this plant that saved it. The roots and the stem are where the real recovery work happens, and removing the dead foliage clears the way for the plant to focus entirely on that work, instead of wasting resources keeping dying leaves alive. Once the foliage is handled, address the part almost nobody thinks to check, and that is exactly why most dying houseplants never get the chance to recover: the root system. Carefully remove the entire plant from its pot, gently squeezing a plastic pot's sides or running a butter knife around a ceramic one's inside edge if needed. Once free, gently brush and shake away the old soil so you can see the full root structure, not just guess at it. Now look closely at what you are seeing. Healthy roots on most indoor ornamentals are firm to the touch and have a consistent color, often white, cream, or a healthy tan depending on the species. Damaged roots feel soft and mushy between your fingers and may appear darkened or discolored compared to the healthy sections. In more advanced cases, you may notice a faint sour smell coming from the worst affected areas, a sign of the bacterial and fungal activity that comes with root rot. This is the moment of honest diagnosis. You need to know exactly how much of the root system is still salvageable before you move forward, and there is no shortcut around carefully inspecting every section by hand. Using your pruning shears, cut away every section showing these signs of rot. Be thorough. Leaving even a small section of infected root tissue attached to healthy roots gives mold and bacteria a foothold to spread right back into the tissue you are trying to save. Continue until what remains is exclusively firm, healthy colored root tissue. I want to be honest here, because a lot of online plant advice gets a little too optimistic about this part. If you cut away the rotted sections and discover almost nothing healthy left, a root ball that is small, sparse, or barely there, the plant's odds of recovery do drop. This method works most reliably when a meaningful amount of healthy root tissue remains after the trim. A plant with even a modest healthy root base has something to rebuild from. One with virtually no root tissue left is fighting a much harder battle, and I would rather tell you that honestly now than let you feel you did something wrong later if a truly far-gone plant does not make it. Once trimming is finished, rinse the remaining healthy roots gently but thoroughly under clean running water, removing any last fragments of old soil or rotted tissue. People often skip this once the rot is cut away, but leftover soil can carry the same mold spores and bacteria right back into the fresh pot you are about to prepare. Stage 2. Here is where we use the first kitchen ingredient, and here is also where I want to clear up some misinformation. A lot of plant care advice recommends disinfecting roots with diluted bleach, or hydrogen peroxide, at concentrations frankly stronger than a recovering plant can tolerate. Those methods work, but they also risk damaging the healthy tissue you just identified. There is a gentler option home gardening has used for a very long time, sitting in your refrigerator's produce drawer right now: a plain lemon. The acid in fresh lemon juice, citric acid, is a mild and genuinely effective disinfectant against the mold and bacteria responsible for root rot, without being harsh enough to damage healthy tissue the way stronger disinfectants can. The goal here is not the strongest possible disinfectant. It is the mildest one that still gets the job done, because the roots in front of you have already been through enough stress for one day. The formula is simple, and precision matters. Measure 500 milliliters of clean water into a cup or bowl, roughly 2 cups. Squeeze exactly 1 teaspoon of fresh lemon juice in and stir completely. I emphasize exactly, because more is not better. A stronger solution does not disinfect more effectively, but it does risk irritating the cut ends of the roots you just trimmed. 1 teaspoon in 500 milliliters disinfects effectively while staying gentle enough for stressed tissue. Once your solution is mixed, submerge the entire remaining root system, along with the lower stem, into the diluted lemon water. Make sure everything that needs treatment is actually underwater, not just resting on the surface. Leave the plant to soak for 20 minutes. Set a timer. 20 minutes is enough for the mild acid to disinfect thoroughly without waterlogging tissue that does not need to sit in water any longer than necessary. While that timer runs, you have exactly enough time to prepare what the plant is about to live in next. Stage 3. While your plant soaks, think about the environment it is about to live in, because here is an honest fact that explains why so many houseplants develop root rot in the first place. It is very often not bad luck, and very often not overwatering in the way people assume. It is the growing medium itself. Standard potting soil straight out of a bag, used alone, frequently holds far more moisture than tropical ornamental roots are built to sit in for extended periods. Water gets trapped, oxygen gets squeezed out, and roots that cannot breathe begin to rot from the inside, even when the person watering is doing everything by the book. The fix is not watering less. The fix is changing what the water has to sit in. The growing medium that works best for recovering tropical houseplants like anthuriums is a 50-50 blend of 2 components, each doing a specific job. The first is coconut husk chips, sometimes sold as cocoa coir chips, which retain a moderate, healthy amount of moisture while creating air pockets throughout the medium, exactly what these roots evolved to grow in within their natural humid forest environments. The second is either coarse sand or a basic organic well-draining soil, and its job is structural, giving the mixture enough weight and drainage that water cannot simply pool at the bottom of the pot the way it would in pure coconut husk alone. Combine the 2 components in equal parts and mix thoroughly until you have an even blend rather than separate layers or clumps. Once mixed, a simple test tells you whether you have the ratio right. Take a handful and squeeze it firmly in your fist. Then open your hand. The mixture should hold together loosely for a moment and then crumble apart gently as you release. Not collapse into dust immediately, and not stay packed into a solid clump. That gentle clump and crumble behavior is the texture that signals the right balance of moisture retention and aeration. If it stays packed in a solid ball, add a little more sand or soil. If it will not hold together at all, add a touch more coconut husk. By now, your 20-minute soak should be finished. Lift the plant out of the lemon solution and replant it immediately, while the roots are still clean and the disinfecting effect is fresh. Fill in the prepared growing medium around the roots, positioning the root system in the center of the pot. Spread out naturally rather than bent, folded, or crammed against the sides. This matters more than people expect. Roots forced into an unnatural, cramped position will struggle to establish themselves even in good soil, so take the extra 30 seconds to arrange them the way they would naturally want to sit. As you fill in the medium, periodically tap the sides of the pot gently against a table or counter. This settles the medium evenly into the small gaps around the roots, without you having to pack it down by hand. Pressing down forcefully with your fingers compacts it and undoes the aeration you just worked to create. A few gentle taps accomplish the same settling without sacrificing that airy texture. Once the plant is potted, resist the urge to water it immediately. I know this feels counterintuitive, especially after everything the plant has just been through, but this is one of the most important small details in the entire process. The roots have fresh cuts from the trimming stage, and those cut surfaces need a brief period to begin healing and stabilizing before they are exposed to a fresh round of moisture. Place the newly potted plant in a cool, well-ventilated spot out of direct sun, and leave it completely alone for 1 full day. No water, just rest. This single day of patience is what separates a plant that settles in smoothly from one that goes into further shock right when it was starting to recover. By the way, if you're looking to completely transform your yard into a low-maintenance paradise, don't forget that my full reference guide, The Plant Once Garden, is now officially available. It's 150 pages, covering all the perennial foundations and permanent setups we talk about on this channel. You can scan the QR code right here on the screen, or find the link in the pinned comment below to grab your copy. Now, let's move on. Stage 4. We are now roughly 24 hours into the process, and this is where the second kitchen ingredient comes in, and where the recovery genuinely begins to take shape. After that first quiet day has passed, the plant is ready for its first nutrition, and this is the moment where a lot of people reach for synthetic liquid fertilizer, assuming a stressed plant needs the strongest possible boost to recover quickly. That instinct is backwards. A plant in this fragile estate, with a freshly trimmed root system still adjusting to its new growing medium, can be genuinely harmed by a strong synthetic fertilizer. What it actually needs is something gentle, naturally balanced, and easy for compromised roots to take up without strain. And that something is sitting in the beverage aisle of almost any grocery store in the form of plain coconut water. Plain coconut water, the unsweetened kind without any added sugar or flavoring, contains a naturally balanced mix of vitamins, minerals, and natural sugars that closely mirrors the kind of gentle nutrition a plant's own root system would historically have processed gradually rather than all at once. It is, in a sense, training wheels for a root system that is not ready to handle anything more intense yet. The formula here is straightforward. Measure out 100 milliliters of plain coconut water and combine it with 300 milliliters of plain water, giving you a diluted solution at roughly 1 part coconut water to 3 parts plain water. The dilution matters every bit as much as the lemon ratio did earlier. Undiluted coconut water is too concentrated for a root system in recovery and risks overwhelming roots that are still healing from being trimmed just a day earlier. Diluted to this ratio, the solution delivers just enough nutrition to encourage new cell activity along the stem without shocking a plant that has already been through enough shocks for 1 week. Water the root zone directly with this diluted coconut water mixture, pouring it slowly so it has time to soak in rather than running straight through and out the drainage holes. This is the application that triggers what comes next. New cell division beginning along what is often called the mother stem, the original main stem structure that remains after all the damaged foliage was removed back in stage 1. After watering, move the pot to a spot that receives soft, indirect light. This is another detail worth being precise about. Harsh, direct sunlight at this stage can stress a plant that has no leaves to regulate its own water loss and temperature, while a spot with gentle filtered light gives the plant enough light energy to begin the early stages of recovery without the risk of scorching tender new growth that has not even appeared yet. Stage 5. This is the stage where patience becomes the most important ingredient of all, more important than anything you have measured out so far, and it is also the stage where you will start to see the proof that everything up to this point actually worked. By around the 3rd week, if you have followed each stage correctly, you will begin to notice something that, the first time you see it happen, genuinely changes how you think about what a dead plant actually means. Small green shoots will begin emerging directly from that bare mother stem you preserved back in stage 1. Not from the soil, not from a new cutting, from the original stem structure that, 3 weeks earlier, looked like nothing more than a stick standing in a pot. This is the moment that makes the entire process worth it, and I want to be honest about why it works. Because understanding the why will make you a better plant caretaker going forward, not just someone following steps blindly. Those green shoots are coming from dormant growth nodes that exist along the stem of most ornamental plants, like anthuriums, nodes that remain inactive as long as the plant is putting its energy toward maintaining existing leaves. Once you remove the damaged foliage in stage 1, and once the root system began stabilizing in its new growing medium, the plant's stored energy had nowhere else productive to go except into activating those dormant nodes. The new shoots are not a miracle. They are simply what tropical ornamental plants do naturally, once the conditions are right and the competing drains on their energy have been removed. To sustain this new growth as it appears, it is time for the 3rd kitchen ingredient, and this one surprises people more than the lemon or the coconut water, because it is the most ordinary pantry staple of the entire process: plain raw white rice. Take 2 teaspoons of raw white rice and add it to 500 milliliters of water. Mix it well and allow the rice to sit in the water, which draws out the natural starches and trace nutrients contained in the rice grains into the surrounding water. Once this has had time to infuse, strain out the rice itself and pour the resulting liquid into a spray bottle. The reasoning behind using rice water at this particular stage, rather than continuing with coconut water indefinitely, comes down to matching the nutrient source to what the plant needs at each phase of recovery. The coconut water in stage 4 was about gentle, broad-spectrum nutrition to wake the plant up. The rice water in stage 5 is about sustaining steady, mild nourishment over a longer period as new growth establishes itself, providing natural sugars and trace nutrients without overwhelming tender new shoots that are, quite literally, only days or weeks old and still extremely delicate. Apply the rice water by spraying it evenly across the emerging shoots and across the top layer of the growing medium. Do this twice a month, alternating these applications with your regular watering schedule rather than stacking them on top of each other. This alternating rhythm gives the plant variety in its nutrition, without ever flooding the root zone with too much of any one thing. And continue keeping the plant in that same spot with soft, indirect sunlight throughout this entire stretch. The new shoots emerging from the mother stem are still extremely tender at this point, and direct harsh sun can damage or even kill new growth that took 3 full weeks of careful work to finally appear. By the time you reach 6 weeks from when you first began this process, the transformation is genuinely dramatic, and if you have been documenting the plant's progress with photos along the way, this is the moment those photos earn their place in your camera roll. The shoots that first appeared as tiny green nubs at week 3 will have developed into fully formed leaves, vibrant and green, with none of the yellowing, browning, or rot that defined the plant when you started. The root system, which you trimmed down to a small surviving core back in stage 1, will have grown into a noticeably more robust, established network supporting all of this new growth above the soil line. The plant you are looking at after 6 weeks bears almost no resemblance to the plant you started with. I want to take a moment here to be honest, because the internet is full of plant revival tutorials that make recovery sound guaranteed and effortless every time, and that is simply not the complete truth. This method works because it addresses the actual underlying problem rather than just treating visible symptoms. Removing damaged foliage stops the energy drain. Trimming rotted roots removes the source of ongoing infection. The lemon soak disinfects gently without damaging healthy tissue. The new growing medium fixes the aeration and drainage problem that very likely caused the rot in the first place. And the staged nutrition, coconut water then rice water, feeds the plant at a pace its compromised system can actually absorb, rather than overwhelming it the way a strong synthetic fertilizer applied too early would. Every stage exists for a specific physiological reason, not because it is a folk tradition repeated without explanation. That said, I want to set honest expectations rather than promise a miracle every time. This method gives a struggling plant the best possible conditions to use whatever life it has left. A plant with even a modest core of healthy root tissue after trimming has genuinely good odds of the kind of recovery you saw in this anthurium. A plant where almost nothing healthy remains is fighting a much steeper battle, and I would rather you know that now than feel discouraged later if a truly far-gone plant does not make it. The honest version of this technique is not, every dying plant can be saved. It is, most dying plants have more life left in them than you think, and this is how you give that remaining life the best possible chance. A few additional details worth knowing as you apply this to your own plants at home, since not every situation will look exactly like the demonstration plant did. If your plant still has some healthy green leaves when you begin, you do not need to remove them just because the plant overall looks rough. Only remove what is genuinely damaged, since healthy leaves keep contributing to photosynthesis. If after a full 6 weeks you see no shoot activity along the stem, the surviving tissue likely did not have enough reserves to recover, and it is reasonable to propagate any remaining healthy stem cuttings instead of waiting indefinitely. And if a sour smell returns from the growing medium after replanting, rot may be reestablishing itself, and the plant should be taken out, re-inspected, and potentially put through stages 1 and 2 again. I also want to address something that comes up constantly in the comments, because a few popular shortcuts circulate online that genuinely do more harm than good. Some advice recommends skipping the root trimming step entirely and simply repotting a rotted plant into fresh soil, hoping the new soil alone solves the problem. It does not. Rotted tissue left attached to healthy roots keeps spreading infection, regardless of how clean the surrounding soil is. And skipping the trim is one of the most common reasons home revival attempts fail. Other advice recommends full-strength hydrogen peroxide directly on roots, which is considerably harsher on compromised tissue than the gentle lemon solution outlined here. And a surprising amount of advice skips the rest period in stage 3 entirely, watering a freshly repotted plant right away, which removes the brief stabilization window those fresh root cuts genuinely benefit from. Once your plant has fully recovered using this process, ongoing care from that point forward is fairly simple and does not require continuing the rice water or coconut water applications indefinitely. Those staged nutrient boosts exist specifically to support the plant through the vulnerable recovery window. Once you see consistent new leaf growth across multiple nodes, rather than just the first shoots, you can transition the plant to a normal watering schedule appropriate for its species, paying attention going forward to not letting it sit in standing water, which is very often how plants end up in the rotted state you started with in the first place. Think of everything in this video as the recovery protocol, and normal long-term care as the separate, much simpler phase that begins only once recovery is firmly established. There is something genuinely rewarding about this process that goes beyond just the practical outcome of saving a plant you would otherwise have thrown away. Every time you check on the plant during these 6 weeks, every small watering and every spray of rice water, you are essentially placing a small bet of patience and trust in something that, at the start, gave you very little visible reason for optimism. And when those first green shoots actually appear at week 3, there is a particular kind of satisfaction in that moment that comes only from having put in real effort towards something that looked, by every outward appearance, like it was already finished. That feeling is, in my opinion, a meaningful part of why people keep houseplants in the first place, and it is the same feeling that keeps experienced gardeners coming back to this kind of hands-on revival work year after year, rather than simply replacing a struggling plant with a fresh one from the store. If you have a plant at home right now that you have been quietly avoiding, the kind sitting in a corner that you have already started mentally preparing to throw away, I would genuinely encourage you to give this process a try before you do. Inspect the roots before you make any final decision. You may find, the way I did with this anthurium, that there is considerably more healthy life left underneath the soil than the sad-looking foliage on top was letting on. The plant in front of you may not be as far gone as it appears, and 6 weeks from now, you may be looking at fresh green growth instead of an empty spot on your windowsill where a thriving plant used to be. I hope this process helps you bring something back to life in your own home, the way it did for this plant in mine. If you try this method on a struggling plant of your own, drop a comment below and let me know what you are working with and how it goes, because I genuinely read through every comment on these videos, and the questions you ask shape what I cover in future ones. If this was helpful, subscribe to Garden Roots for more honest, step-by-step plant care content, built for people who would rather understand why a method works than just follow instructions blindly. If you are ready to stop losing plants every winter and finally build a garden that takes care of itself, grab your copy of The Plant Once Garden, 150 pages of everything this channel teaches, mapped out for you. Scan the QR code on your screen or click the link in the description to get started. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today, and I will see you in the next one.